Welcome, everybody. We're going to give it a minute for folks to get in the room. It's good to see everyone coming in to the room for this webinar. As we get started, if folks who are joining want to hop in the chat just to say hello and let us know where you're coming in from here, what brought you to the webinar, just to get the chat going. It'd be nice to hear from folks, and we will start in just a minute and let you know the agenda for the webinar and share lots of great information and save most of our time for questions, because we want to hear your questions about SPCUNY Actionists and how we can help you out as you think about applying. So I will, there we go. Corey started us off in the chat. All right. Hi. Amazing. Yes, and feel free to keep chatting in there. Nice to see you too. As we get started, we also are going to have a Q&A available, so you can put questions in that box as well, but feel free to type in the chat as well. We'll be monitoring both of them. So it's going to be a webinar format where you will see all of us folks here representing Social Practice CUNY. And if you're joining us in the audience for the webinar, you can communicate with us through the chat. And we will monitor that and say your questions out loud so that they can be heard by everybody. Terrific. Well, I'm going to go ahead and start a little screen share to get us started. Does that sound great? Terrific. Okay, so you are here at the SPCUNY online information session for potential actionists. You are also getting an amazing view if you see Chloe in her window of a beautiful cat. Bonus. So what we're going to be doing today is, this is the agenda. We have a full hour together. We will not be going over an hour. We hope to get through everything and leave most of our time for questions. We're going to go through what is Social Practice CUNY, what is an actionist, share a little bit about the student cohort experience, talk a bit about some new initiatives at Social Practice CUNY, and then just go over to some logistical things to keep in mind should you join us as an SPCUNY Actionist. And then that will be presentations by each of us that you see here in the webinar, and we're going to save most of our hour for Q&A. So feel free to put questions into the chat or into the Q&A box as we go, and we will get to all of those by the end of the hour. You're going to be hearing from Greg Cholette, our co-director of SPCUNY, and then Chloe Bass, our other co-director of SPCUNY, then Ari Wolf, who is a former SPCUNY student, to talk about her experience as an SPCUNY student. And then my name is Catherine, that's me, Catherine Lasota, as the Associate Director of SPCUNY. We'll be talking about some new initiatives. And then Corey Tamler, one of our amazing program coordinators, is going to talk about some things you should keep in mind as you consider the Actionist program. And then we'll have most of our time for Q&A. So we're going to start off with what is Social Practice CUNY, and a bit about the student cohort experience as we go on, and you'll hear about that from a bit from Chloe and then also from Ari. So I am going to stop the screen share so you can see everyone in the room now and pass the mic to our co-director, Greg Cholette.
Hello, everybody. Nice to meet you, here. Really quickly, I'm going to give you a really quick overview. We want to save time for questions, so anything I don't fill in deeply enough, you just ask. What is SPCUNY? Well, really, it started as Social Practice Queens, which was a project, which is still a concentration and was a concentration from about 2010, 2011 at Queens College. And it was just a concentration in the MFA that we began to develop more and more, get a little bit of funding for. And at a certain point, when Chloe Bass came into the program, not the cat, she basically, we both said, listen, let's change this up. And so we got funding from the Mellon Foundation, and that created SPCUNY, what is different? It's no longer a concentration in one school. It's really an overarching project in which we try to bring together people from across CUNY who are already engaged in some kind of social justice, cultural related work. That's the main sort of thread that connects everybody. Because the more we were involved in CUNY, the more we realized there's many people doing this, both as faculty and students, or students sort of learning and wishing, wanting to do more like this. So that's how that comes together. And that's why there's a cohort made up of students and there's a cohort made up of faculty. I'll just say a little bit about the teaching. I teach a seminar in the history and theory of socially engaged art. I'm going to put a link in the chat so you can actually take a look at that. And let's see if I've got the right one. If I put it in hosts and panelists, is that going to go to everybody, or can you send it to everybody, Catherine?
You can change that on the toggle down to say to everyone instead. It should be on your end. No?
No, that's not an option.
Go ahead and send it to me and I'll share it to everyone then.
Got it. Will do. And so this is just one of the years where I taught this class. It's been going on now for about 6 or 7 years. And you can see some of the guests that I brought to the class, which included Lucy Lepard and Suzanne Lacey. We made a visit to Interference Archive in Brooklyn. And it's lots of information about not just sort of background or particular genealogy about how art and social justice may connect, but also actual concrete examples of the praxis of it. And that's the way the cohort works. So anything else I should cover? Is that to hand it over to Chloe, I think, at this point? Yeah, so questions later. Chloe?
Hi, I'm Chloe Bass. I'm the other co-director of SPCUNY. The cat that I lifted off the table is not my cat. I'm visiting with him this afternoon, and he's extremely senior citizen. And the second I opened my computer, he decided that what he wanted to do was be on my hand. So I have now deeply offended him. So it is my pleasure to deeply offend a senior citizen cat in behalf of sharing information with all of you. So I'm here to really talk about what an actionist is. So Social Practice CUNY has basically 3 tracks for participation. One is specifically dedicated to our MFA students from Queens College, and those are student fellows. But for MFA or graduate students from any other CUNY campus who are going into their 2nd year of study or beyond, we have open applications for anybody to join our cohort. And what that means is that we really can be working with people from across the 25 CUNY campuses, and we've done fairly well, although have not hit yet all 25. We've done fairly well at bringing together people from a wide variety of schools and programs. So as an actionist, which is why you're here, is to apply to be an actionist. If you're not here for that, you're in the wrong place. But we're happy to talk to you anyway. As an actionist, what you will receive is $3,000 in project support to do your own independent work at the intersection of art and social justice. And you will also receive the ability / the requirement to take the 2 Social Practice CUNY seminars at the CUNY Graduate Center. So Greg will be teaching the fall seminar, which is the class that he just mentioned. And then I teach a seminar in the spring where it's more of a practice-based class. And both last year and actually next year, I'll be co-teaching with Alex Uhas, who is a professor in media and film studies, who's based at Brooklyn College. And we're teaching a class on the importance of archives with socially engaged art. Last time it was a really tremendous opportunity for us as well as for the students, like a really special class. So I'm looking forward to that being a very special experience next year too. I'm not teaching this spring because I'm actually on sabbatical. So actionists also receive other forms of support through access to Ting Lin, our communications associate. You receive access to materials for the arts. You receive different types of things that can support your project or your practice more broadly. And I think most importantly, you receive access to each other and to the other members of the cohort of SPCUNY, which means that you'll be meeting students from different graduate programs, but also faculty who are engaged not in teaching, but who are engaged actually as practitioners doing their own projects. And so that can become a kind of mental skill share that you can enjoy. And so I'm going to turn it over to Ari to talk a little bit about her experience as one of our former students and a person who conducted a project with us. So thank you for your time.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ari Wolf. I graduated Queens College in 2023. And being a part of this cohort was a really beautiful experience for a number of reasons. I think having a cross-disciplinary academic space where people from so many different backgrounds are coming together and it is really intergenerational just supported my project and just a different kind of community building that I didn't find in my other courses through CUNY. I think the adaptability, right, as our projects are developing throughout the year, hearing from different people how their project is changing, hearing from faculty who have been a part of social practice and have been making work for 30, 40 years, talk about how their projects are shifting, ask you questions, help you develop, help you connect to other resources in the city. And yeah, it just is a really beautiful space to get resources, to be supported. I was someone who was new to social practice. I studied poetry in undergrad, and I came to QC MFA kind of questioning how I would exist as an artist. And I think through this program, I was able to find some answers and find some way. And I'm continuing my project even now. So having this opportunity gave me a real launching pad for something that I think I wouldn't have had the guts to do otherwise. I think I was always capable, but having the resources and having kind of SPCUNY as an institution alongside me, along with so many other incredible students and faculty, was just the kind of like nexus that I needed to be able to move forward. Yeah, I could talk forever, but I'm not going to do that.
Ari, can I just ask you to briefly describe your project?
Yes. Oh, wow. A crucial piece of information. So my project was the establishment of a children's press, publishing artist books made by young people, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, over the course of a year with me through an after-school program. And SPCUNY really helped with the kind of finalization of that work, the production of books. And then I was able to, through the process, build a relationship with Printed Matter St. Mark's, who has stocked the books and is going to stock our books again this year. Also having a budget and having experience doing this project once allowed me to apply for and receive funding through other institutions this year. So it kind of helped me create a template. And the project is called Citation Needed. I can put a link in the chat.
I think we just did. Yeah.
Oh,
in the background.
awesome.
Or yes, it's just there.
Yes, and Corey's putting some information in the chat as well and about student projects and what kind of projects we're excited to support. And we do have that link in there for Ari's. And we're getting some questions in the chat too, which is great. Just a reminder to continue to encourage you to put questions in the chat that we will absolutely get to in the second half of the hour. So I'm Catherine Lasota. I'm the Associate Director at Social Practice CUNY. It's a new position that was just developed at SPCUNY, and I started this semester. And I've come on board to help develop the network in our public programs even more, because everyone involved in SPCUNY cohort every year is doing such exciting work outside of the classroom, in the classroom, but like their own projects outside of the classroom. And we want to have more ways to make public programming around that, to connect our fellows with each other. If there's projects that are happening that could speak to each other, how could we get students talking with each other, learning from each other? So some of the things that are in the pipeline now that are already getting started is a podcast for Social Practice CUNY, where I'll be in conversation with a fellow in each episode, student fellows and also faculty fellows, talking about your projects, talking about your definition of social practice. And this will serve as a way to both archive what's happening at Social Practice CUNY, a way for you to publicize your own work and have a link and a document of your own work at this time, and also help us as we continue to evolve the definition of social practice and have a platform for you to talk about what it means to you, because it is a constantly evolving definition, and everyone comes in from different disciplines and different ideas about what they bring to their social practice art projects. We are also working on a really fun launch event for that podcast later this summer, hopefully to kick off the fall semester. So keep your eyes open for that. And then I think you heard, of course, like Ari was doing such incredible things. All of our students are doing such incredible work and are often affiliated with organizations or even have founded their own organizations around the city. And so I'm also here trying to create ways that students can learn from each other and what they're doing in those ways. For example, we have one of our student fellows this year who's also a fellow at PS1, the Museum in Queens affiliated with MoMA, and she's hoping to bring students through to do special tours there or have a gathering there. There's all kinds of ways that we can connect students and faculty with each other in events, in conversation, and I'm hoping to talk to the new cohort as they come in the fall, figure out what you need and what you desire, and so we can support you outside of the classroom as much as possible too. Finally, we're thinking through what might be possible in terms of a publication arm of Social Practice CUNY. There's been some interest expressed in the possibility of a yearly journal of writings of members of the cohort, or even having members of the cohort involved in putting together a journal of some kind and learning from that experience. So just as possibly some seed projects in that area, we might explore putting some zines together in the coming year, to have another opportunity for you to be in conversation with each other, to have your own thoughts in writing and talk about your projects and your ideas around social practice. So with that, I'm going to pass the mic to Corey Tamler.
Hi, I'm Corey. I am, in addition to being the program coordinator, one of two program coordinators for SPCUNY, I am also a PhD student in the Theater and Performance program at the Graduate Center. And so I'm just going to talk a little bit about a couple of things, like a couple of logistical things that you will probably want to think about as you're thinking about whether it makes sense to apply, and that you should keep in mind if you're offered a position as an actionist, like what some of the implications might be for your own home program. So one thing that's important to reaffirm is that SPCUNY is not a degree granting program. We don't give you a certificate, we don't give you a degree. We are here to we can be in conversation with the work that you are doing in your home program. But that's kind of up to you to sort of direct and figure out how that works, that can work together with your home program. And so that's really important to keep in mind. We, as an initiative that works across CUNY, anyone who's already been in a CUNY program for a little bit of time knows that CUNY has a lot of bureaucracy that all of us have the pleasure of dealing with. And we are constantly learning as the SPCUNY team about how to sort of interact and work with the different CUNY campuses and do our best to connect people across campuses. And that's one of our mandates, and the reasons that we exist is that we kind of want to connect CUNY better with itself. But that also leads to that's kind of a constant learning process for us. And that means that we don't always know how processes work at the home campus that any of our fellows in our cohort are coming from. So that's something that we really, we do everything that we can to support students and faculty in what they need coming from their own campuses, but you should kind of have a handle on what the questions are that you should ask your own program to make sure that that your year as part of the SPCUNY cohort would be something that's supportive to the work that you're doing, and is something that you can actually take on. So some of the things to think about are that it's a mandatory part of being part of the SPCUNY cohort as a student to take the SPCUNY seminar in both the fall and the spring semesters. This means you have to be a matriculated student for the full year. for the full 2024-2025 academic year. And you need to also have the room in your schedule to take a 3-credit seminar in the fall and a 3-credit seminar in the spring. So you might want to check in advance, like often we've had students need to go through different routes to also be able to get credit within their own programs. Some programs, particularly MFA programs, are more restrictive than others in terms of like what kinds of courses can count for credit and whether the course functions as a practice class, this kind of thing. So what we can do is provide you with syllabi and letters of support and other kinds of things like this. But you might need to do some work, like speaking to your advisor or to the head of your department to make sure you can actually get credit for the course, or that you have room to take the course as an elective, these kinds of things. It's also possible that taking, like, you just need to be aware of what your credit load is, because these are 3 CUNY credits. So you can't necessarily take them on top of the other courses that you would already be taking. Like, it needs to be part of your actual course schedule. So you need to make sure that you have room for that. And if you're going over some kind of course load, you would have to expect that you might have an extra tuition fee on top of that SPCUNY would not cover. So those are some things course-wise to think about in advance. The class meets at the Graduate Center, and the days and times of the class will be announced as far as we can in advance of the semester. But you would need to make sure that you are able to commute once a week to the Grad Center to take the course. You also will, if you're not a student at the Graduate Center, some of our actionists are Graduate Center students, and they can directly register for the course. Students who are at other campuses other than the Graduate Center or Queens College have to go through the e-permit process to get into the course, which is possible for every CUNY student, but is just a bit of an administrative thing to do. So we would work with you to make sure that you get e-permitted into the course, but that's something to keep in mind. And another thing to mention is, so we have the support that we offer. The primary support, as Chloe mentioned, is $3,000 towards a public-facing project to support the project that you would be working on during your year as part of the cohort. That is distributed as a student fellowship, like a CUNY fellowship. And that also works differently at every campus. And so that is also something that on the side of the student cohort, it mostly means that some student actionists are able to get their funding support from SPCUNY relatively quickly. With others, it takes a little bit longer. And we do everything we can to make it happen as fast as possible. But it's not really within our control, because we need to how quickly that happens. We need to disperse funds through your home campus. So just another thing to keep in mind is that if you apply to the program and you're really depending on this $3,000 to come immediately at the beginning of the semester, you probably want to talk with us about that, or have a contingency plan in place, because CUNY bureaucracy is slow, and we cannot simply cut you a check, although we really, really, really wish that we could. And is there anything else I want to mention? Just in general, like, something to take away from all of this is that it's really helpful and important for all of the members of the cohort, whether they're students or faculty, to come into this knowing that that it will work really well for you if you're able to be pretty self-directed, and to, like, we are here to sort of support and help network people, and also, like, provide anything, like, that we're able to in terms of support letters, in terms of talking to your home campus and this kind of thing. But since we're not a degree program, and we don't have, like, a physical space that we're providing students, like, we don't provide you studio space, for example, we really work best for people who are pretty self-directed, and who come to us with that your project can absolutely change over the course of your year with us. So you don't need to feel that you're committed to the project that you submit with your application. Um, but uh, but but the program really works best for people who come in ready to be pretty self-directed and to ask us for what they need, so that we know what you need and we can support you in getting it. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say, and
Awesome.
we can get to the rest in questions.
Yes, and there's lots of great questions coming through, so I want to make sure that we get to them. I'm going to start reading from them in the chat and then also in the Q&A, and please feel free to continue adding questions. We will get to all of them. I'm just going to go ahead and read aloud what Corey put into the chat earlier, which was the kinds of projects that Social Practice CUNY is generally excited to support. SPCUNY is focused on work that has both an artistic component in any discipline of the arts and a social justice component. We're open to many different forms of artistic practice and of social justice and community involvement, but we do prioritize projects that work directly with people and with communities outside of CUNY classrooms. So with that, I'm going to start reading through some things that people have been putting in and then invite any of our panelists to jump in to answer. I will say that we had early on, one of our attendees has noted that she is very interested and very new to this program and says that she has undergrad in performance studies and visual art and is working in performance involved with AI and popular culture. She's currently in the arts admin grad program at Baruch. Can any of you speak to how that might fit in with a student cohort here, if that sounds like a background that suits or sounds familiar with some of
Yeah,
our students?
absolutely.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the arts admin programs definitely can be a good conduit to SPCUNY. We have a current student who is enrolled in an arts admin program. And, you know, one of the things that I think is our goal in SPCUNY is not just that we're kind of creating very engaged creative practitioners, but also that we're giving some tools that might help a future generation of arts leaders, and that includes in an administrative capacity. So while we ourselves do not teach arts admin, if you feel like this goes along with your existing interests and fits well with your coursework and gives you the opportunity to develop a different type of project than you would be doing in one of your admin classes, I think this is a wonderful fit.
I'll just quickly add that in a past life, I was actually the chair of the arts administration program, the MA at the Art Institute in Chicago. So I'm happy to sort of have people involved in that. And I was not a typical arts administration teacher, I can tell you that. My favorite class was extreme arts administration, and I'm happy to share the syllabus for that, but you can bounce those ideas off me for sure.
Excellent. We have another question about wondering if a project might fit into the realm of what the student is doing with the cohort. So I wonder if my project is within the spectrum of SPCUNY. It's a community engaging visual text-based project that explores the idea of belonging, dissociation to the objects in American culture. This is focusing on an Iranian immigrant community in the US for now and is in its initial stages. So could you and our panel speak to that kind of a project and also the fact that it's in its initial stages, perhaps?
That sounds just perfect. And I put in the chat, I don't know if you got that yet, a project by Satari Arshlu, who is an Iranian student, who was actually part of SPQ, the Social Practice Queens that preceded SPCUNY. And she was doing work that I think is very much aligned, Ali, with what you're doing. So it sounds like a very good project to apply for. But just be sure to focus on those aspects of it that you're talking about, the sort of community, not exclusively the photography. I think that's the important thing.
Great. Yeah, and I got that link in the chat to Ali too. We definitely have some multi-part questions coming through in the Q&A, so I'm going to start getting to those as well. We have a question here that says, I'm doing my documentary thesis and wanted some funding to support the development. Can this be part of the program?
I would say that really varies. We don't know what your documentary thesis is. We don't know who it involves. We don't know how you're making it. So I would say we would need some more information. We have funded documentary projects in the past, but if you're just kind of going and interviewing people in a fairly standard format and not really engaging community in the process of filmmaking, it may not be a good fit. But if you're doing it in another way, and I truly have no idea what you're doing, we would be happy to hear more. So you can let us know more if you would like, or you can go ahead and apply. But we need to know more to answer that question fully.
Yeah, and if that was your question, feel free to drop more information in if you want us to address that. There's more questions coming through. We have a multi-part question. I'll do it in parts. The first question is, how many applicants will you be accepting? We have 12 students now, is that right? Or but in the Actionists, it's not that high a number.
It's usually
so
around, it's a bit dependent on the volume of applications we get but it's around 6. So yeah, generally we have around 12 students in the student portion of the cohort, but that includes our Social Practice Queens student fellows who have a similar kind of cohort experience, are also student members of the cohort, take the seminar as well, but they're all at Queens College in the social practice certificate concentration. So we'll probably be taking around 6 or 7 has been what we've done the past 3 years.
Great. Next part of this question asks, if you have a concept for a project but do not have much grant or proposal writing experience, is it still encouraged to apply?
Definitely. School is for learning, and applying for things within schools that are not degree granting programs are learning opportunities.
Yes, absolutely. And if you have had a chance to check out, we have the application online. If you have any questions about parts of the application, what we're looking for, you can absolutely write to spcuny@gmail.com with questions about the application. And clarification on being a current student. Can you please repeat if you're eligible if you are graduating from your MFA before or by fall 2024? You see the shaking heads. Unfortunately, no, you do need to be a matriculated student for the entire 2024-2025 year. Hopefully you can enjoy some of our public programming and engage with folks in that way, but you do need to be a student for the entire year. Okay, we have some more questions coming through. We do still have time for more, but please continue putting more questions in. And just a note from Corey, we don't ask for a super detailed budget. You don't even need to submit a budget as part of your application. It's a $3,000 fellowship, but you don't need to give a specific budget about how you're spending that money, which is something you might need to do on other applications.
This is a logistical thing, actually, that is just a small point to note, is that $3,000 is dispersed as quickly as we can get it to you at the beginning of your cohort year. It is not you just get that $3,000. You can use it to support your project. You can use parts of it to pay other people who are working on your project or for materials. We don't ask you for that particular for that $3,000 fellowship. We don't ask you for receipts. We don't ask you for any kind of documentation. You just get that $3,000 to do with as you see fit. You can use it for to support your transit cars. You get $3,000. There is also a small documentation budget that is separate from that. So there are some other ways that we do our best to make available to support all of the fellows throughout their year with us. And one of those ways is offering some money that people, for example, can use towards documenting their projects, and that is paid as a reimbursement process. But that sort of comes later. You don't need to put together a budget. And yeah, just to the question again about whether you need to be experienced in grant writing to apply for this, absolutely not, especially as a student. And hopefully the way that the application is put together, it's relatively simple, but it is also modeled towards the way that that a lot of us as working artists also have to apply to grants outside of the academic sphere. So hopefully it would also be useful as an exercise to you if you've never applied for a grant before, to apply to this, to see sort of the kinds of questions and the kinds of materials that that you would be asked for in other kinds of grant making situations.
Yeah, and I think it's also just important to know, I think we may have mentioned Ting before here, our communications consultant. We have great opportunities to publicize your work as well. And have a space online for your project to exist on a website. So that's also, in addition to the funding that you receive, is a great benefit to your projects you're working on. We do have a question about what day of the week is the seminar, or is it TBD? Greg, you're in the fall.
Mondays.
Yeah, my seminar will be Mondays.
And mine will also be Mondays. The difference being that Greg's will be Monday afternoon. You can say the exact time, Greg, if you know. Mine will be Monday evenings from 6 to 10 p.m.
Yeah, mine is like 2 to 4, sometimes 4:30 if we get really into stuff.
Okay, great. So that's, again, just to remind you, Greg's class will be in the fall, so that will be the afternoon time in the fall, and then Chloe's would be the evening time in the spring, both on Mondays. Corey, we just have a quick question for Corey. Someone's curious to know your educational background.
My educational background. I did an undergraduate degree in physics and philosophy of science and creative writing, and then worked as a community engaged artist for like 6-7 years, and then without a master's degree, entered the PhD program in theater and performance at the CUNY Graduate Center, where I've been for a while, and also still continue to have my own arts practice. Also, I was homeschooled until college, or until high school. That's my educational background.
See, this is why we have these webinars. I didn't even know that until now, and someone asked, and now I know.
And Corey joins us from Berlin, so there's also a little bit of a time difference, and that's something.
Right. Exactly. We have some more questions coming through, and make sure we get to them. In the chat, we have, what does the scale of the project need to look like? If it's a participatory performance, how many community members would ideally need to be engaged, and/or how many performances would be requested? Greg, do you want to answer that?
Sure. Hey, Bryn, good question. There really aren't any sort of particular parameters on that. I think it really depends on the kind of project that you create. We've had projects with just a few people involved, or who maybe the performance just a few people, and other people were sort of participating in a sort of secondary way. I would just say using good judgment to think about what does it mean to be public. I think that's really the key here.
Great, yeah, and then as a follow-up to a question about, are there any available spaces through SPCUNY that could be used for the project?
Do you mean for producing the work or for performing the work, or both?
So I'll wait for a reply from Bryn on that about, I guess we'll go ahead. I guess let's go ahead and answer either question in case people have.
I can answer
Chloe.
that question. The answer is generally no. We don't actually have any spaces. We are not a space-giving organization, but we're happy to help you make connections through the people that we know in the larger urban environment about your needs. That generally is something that will have to happen as your project gains more clarity, because although we're happy to take a project in its initial phases, it can be a little bit more difficult to make those connections when a project is in its initial phases. But the direct answer is that we do not have space to offer.
I think just like one other thing that I would say is, through my cohort, when people had a request that was really clear and specific, I feel like it was generally able to be met by someone in the group, or by someone who someone in the group knew. So although I understand the official answer is no, I do think this supports access to a network of people who have all sorts of spaces.
And structurally, how that access works, yeah, thanks so much, Brent. It's a great question. Structurally, how that access works to other members of the cohort, we have, this may have already been said, but just to reiterate, that we have 4 meetings with the entire cohort that you commit to at the beginning of your time with us, 2 meetings in the fall and 2 meetings in the spring. We've started doing those hybrid. Initially, they were all online, but now we do them hybrid with as many people in person as possible. And those meetings will be around 2 hours long, and a chance for you to be in the room, not with only the other students in the cohort who you see every week in the seminar, but also with the faculty members of the cohort who are, there's generally about an equal number of faculty members and student members. And to talk about your project. So to talk about things outside of the seminar. The seminar is also not focused on your projects. I think that's maybe important to say, and maybe Chloe or Greg want to speak to that a little bit more. But the seminars in the fall and the spring are focused much more on the history and the theory of social practice, and on general kind of practices that you might use as an artist, sort of like at a slightly more advanced level than a beginner, like thinking about how do I actually move forward with this kind of art practice, because there are lots of questions to ask about it, lots of questions that we all have, and that we're sort of interested in engaging with the larger cohort in an ongoing way. And so the cohort meetings, the full cohort meetings that happen in the fall and the spring semester are really the place to talk about what's happening with your SPCUNY project, to get feedback from not only from SPCUNY staff, but also from other cohort members, and to sort of throw out those kinds of questions like Ari mentioned. I'm looking for a space. Here's my project. Here's the stage that it's at. I need a space for this to happen. And then you have 24 people in the room with all kinds of different connections throughout the 5 boroughs who can help you sort of brainstorm around that. Or I'm looking for a tool that can do this thing. And so that's where a lot of that networking happens. We also put together a Google group that basically functions like a listserv that you can use throughout the semester to reach out to everyone in the cohort, to ask those kinds of questions, to invite them to work that you're doing, and to just be connected with this sort of larger cohort of people.
Yeah, and to be clear there, Corey's mentioning 24 people at those meetings. So you're seeing the 12 students in the cohort every week in your class, but those opportunities to meet with the entire cohort, we're saying there's also 12 faculty approximately each year who are in the cohort, and you get to engage with them in those cohort meetings. I'm going to read aloud a couple more questions that are coming through here. And there's one that was answered in the Q&A, but I want to make sure that we also mention it out loud in case other folks have the questions about being clear about the 3K. Is it awarded for the project, or 3K in costs for the 6 credits of the SPCUNY seminar? And the answer is that the 3K is for project support only. So a follow-up to that, a question as asked was, does that mean the student needs to cover the cost of the seminars and hopefully have those costs/credits fit into one's graduate program? And I would say that's yes. Is that right, Chloe?
That's a yes.
Okay.
That's a yes. So hopefully, and this is why Corey was mentioning checking where you are in terms of having elective slots left in your degree and in your program. That is a question that we will not be able to answer for you. That is a question that your home program coordinator can answer for you. So you need to see, do you have 2 elective slots left in order to take these SPCUNY seminars? If you do, you shouldn't wind up paying likely any additional tuition to whatever full-time tuition you were paying. If you are paying class by class or credit by credit, you will wind up paying the same amount for these credits as you would for any credits. But yes, you need to figure out how that will fit into your program, and how it fits in or doesn't fit in will have some impact on cost, which is beyond our control, unfortunately.
That's right. And the exciting thing about SPCUNY, and that it does serve all 25 schools in the CUNY system, is also the reason that we can't answer that question, because every campus also does things slightly differently and handles student finances slightly differently. There might be a situation if you have a hold on your account that might be credited to a debt you already have to your school and you wouldn't actually see the money, but that's all so individual and depends on your home campus. So we like to think of that in terms of like, but that also means we serve all the schools and you get to interact with students and faculty from across the campuses. And then you just have to do the work on your own on your individual campus to figure out how the money is going to come into your program and your finances.
One more thing I will say to that is if this really feels like a sticking point for you and you're like, I don't know and I'm not sure how this will work with my home campus, you can't, like, if this is really a sticky point for you, please reach out to us at the spcuny@gmail.com email address, because it's very possible we've already had someone in the cohort from your campus, and we can try to either ask that, but like see if that person has time to have a quick check-in with you about logistics. That in the case of a serious, like, I don't even know if it's worth it for me to apply, that's something we can try to help you with. But again, we don't have the answers, but we may have someone who already has some amount of that institutional knowledge that we might be able to connect you with and see if that helps.
Awesome. And we're getting affirmation that that was a clear answer. So that's good to know. And I think it also addresses a question that came through in the chat asking if these seminars would be considered as elective courses or it depends on the college. And then again, that really does depend on your program and working with your advisor to figure that out. We do have a little bit more time for questions, and I'm going to go ahead and ask Ari a question actually, if just to give folks a chance if they didn't get an opportunity to put their question in, so you can type it up while I ask Ari if there's anything that you as a student in the program didn't know to ask until you were in the program or wish you had asked before being in the program. Anything that was surprising to you when you entered, or pleasantly or not?
Yeah, I don't, not really. I think because I was at Queens College, I had access to other people that were in the program the year ahead of me. So I got to have some of those questions answered. However, I did have a lot of hangups about whether or not I was a social practice artist or if my project was social practice enough. And I think those were other questions. Like, I was surprised to discover that a lot of people in the cohort were kind of thinking about and wrestling with. And I think if folks are wondering that, I would just encourage you to apply and just kind of trust yourself, because as you start to study, you know, and take Greg's class and learn why it is so challenging to define this art form, it gets pulled apart for you. And I feel like, yeah, my mind was expanded about what it means and kind of continues to be by the work I see produced from people in the cohort and beyond.
Awesome. Thanks, Ari. And I think we've gotten through all of our questions. Is there anything that Chloe, Greg, or Corey would like to add before we close up the webinar?
The one thing I will add is this is one opportunity to ask questions, but if you find after leaving that you have residual questions that we were unable to answer, you know, you can always shoot us an email at spcuny@gmail.com. Somebody will answer you. Don't worry about that. Corey just put the email in the chat. So, you know, we're happy to answer other questions. I would say the one thing that we probably wouldn't do is give a full review to your entire project proposal before you apply. But, you know, short of that, we're really happy to assist in the process.
Awesome.
I just look forward to reading everybody's proposals, applications, and best of luck with it. Yeah, it's great.
And we got one slipped in at the last minute though, just to generally, how do you measure the success of one's individual project? Which they vary so much.
It's an open question. And, you know, for me, I'm speaking more as an individual who also makes work than I am as the person who leads these seminars and co-directs this program. But I feel like you need to be very honest about what your own metrics of self-assessment are with all of this work always. So actually, I think the question for us as a program is, how do we teach people to develop their metrics to evaluate success? I only somewhat care if your project works in the end. I'm upset if you stalled out on it and it didn't go anywhere, but if it changed, if it, you know, needed to be radically reimagined, if it really were trying incredibly hard and it didn't quite work out. Like all of those things are within reason. And so figuring out how you can evaluate your own success is the most crucial thing for me.
Yeah, when you're dealing with social material, I mean, in a sense, you know, failure is actually a reality. It's part of it, and you know that can happen, and you can learn a lot from that. So we're pretty supportive, but we're also critical, and we'll give you, you know, good constructive feedback as you go along.
Great. And just to answer the final question that came through about if you have a mentor to help between cohort meetings, there's not an official mentorship program set up, though it's something that we're hoping to create opportunities for people to meet folks who you might develop your own mentorship relationship with. But you do have the weekly seminar meetings, and you do have Chloe and Greg teaching those, and they have office hours. So you're never off in the weeds all by yourself. You can talk to folks along the way. Does that sound right, Greg, Chloe?
Absolutely, yeah.
Great. I'm going to
Yeah,
go.
and I will add, you know, if it ever comes up that you're looking for a specific form of mentorship, and again, this is like a person that we actually know or have in our network or somebody that we think we could help you find, we will try to help. We cannot guarantee that person's availability, but we will do our best to connect people as closely as we can.
Yeah,
think,
and
yeah,
go ahead, Chloe.
in general, it's kind of important to say that like we really love to help and support folks who come to us from the cohort with specific asks. If you don't ask for it, we don't know that you need it. But if you were to, we are, I hope, very responsive. So if you come to us and say, I really need a mentor, then we will do our best to find you someone who could work with you in that way, given the parameters of what we're able to offer. But we don't know you need it if you don't ask.
I think that's a really good a closing statement, actually, in general. We don't know you need it if you don't ask, and we absolutely want you to stay in communication with us throughout your cohort year in all kinds of ways. I can just say that having sat in on Greg's seminar this semester myself, he brings in so many great guests. Chloe brings in guests. You get to meet a lot of really amazing people. So that can open doors for you if you establish relationships through those opportunities. I'm going to put up on the screen as we end here the information. If you would like more information, please feel free to contact us, spcuny@gmail.com. Our website is socialpracticecuny.org. All the information is there, the application's there. And thank you so much for coming to this webinar. We will have a recording we will be posting. So if you want to review anything in the recording, you can. If you know folks who couldn't make it and wanted to see the recording, that should be up before long. And good luck with your applications.
Bye, everyone. Thanks so much for taking the time out of your day, and hopefully we'll hear from you.
Bye.
Bye.